Welcome to Above the Clouds, the Untold Stories of Aviation. I'm your host, and for the past 2 decades, I've had the privilege of being at the forefront of private aviation as the founder of VIP Jets. But today, we're not starting with modern luxury aircraft or cutting-edge technology. Instead, we're going back to the very beginning to understand how humanity's most impossible dream became not just reality, but the foundation for an industry that today connects every corner of our globe. Picture this for a moment. You're standing in an open field on a clear morning. You look up at the vast blue sky and you see a bird effortlessly soaring overhead. For just a moment, you feel that ancient human longing, that deep desire to break free from the earth and join that bird in flight. That feeling you just experienced? That's the same feeling that has driven human innovation for thousands of years. Today, we're exploring the incredible journey from humanity's first dreams of flight to the moment those dreams finally took wing at Kitty Hawk. And I want you to think about something as we go through this story together. Every time you've stepped aboard a private aircraft, every time you've experienced the freedom and luxury of personal flight, you're participating in the fulfillment of humanity's oldest and most persistent dream. Let's start our journey in ancient Greece, around 2,500 years ago. Now, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine you're in ancient Athens. The year is roughly 500 BC. There are no airplanes, no helicopters, no hot air balloons. The fastest way to travel is on horseback, and the idea of human flight exists only in the realm of gods and myths. It's in this world that the story of Icarus was born. You probably know the tale, but let me tell you why it matters to our story today. Daedalus, the master craftsman, creates wings of feathers and wax for himself and his son Icarus to escape imprisonment. He warns Icarus not to fly too close to the sun, but the young man, intoxicated by the freedom of flight, ignores his father's warning. The wax melts, and Icarus falls to his death. Now, here's what's fascinating about this myth, and why I bring it up in a podcast about aviation history. The ancient Greeks weren't just telling a cautionary tale about disobedience. They were expressing something profound about human nature, our desire to transcend our earthly limitations, and yes, the risks that come with pushing boundaries. Think about it. Even in their mythology, the Greeks understood that flight represented the ultimate freedom, but also the ultimate responsibility. Fast forward to today, and that same principle governs everything we do in private aviation. The freedom to travel anywhere in the world at a moment's notice comes with the responsibility of maintaining the highest safety standards, the most rigorous training, and the most advanced technology. But the Greeks weren't the only ancient civilization dreaming of flight. Let's travel east to China, around 400 BC. Chinese philosophers were writing about flying machines and artificial birds. They had already invented the kite, which was actually humanity's first successful heavier-than-air flying device. Think about that for a moment. While Europeans were still telling myths about Icarus, the Chinese were already experimenting with actual flight technology. And here's something that might surprise you. The Chinese weren't just flying kites for fun. They were using them for military reconnaissance, to send signals across vast distances, and even to test wind conditions. In other words, they were using flight technology for practical, real-world applications. Sound familiar? That's exactly what we do in private aviation today, using advanced aircraft for business, personal travel, and connecting people across the globe. Now let's jump forward about 1,000 years to Renaissance Italy, and we encounter one of history's most fascinating figures when it comes to flight, Leonardo da Vinci. The year is around 1485, and Leonardo is sitting in his workshop, surrounded by his notebooks, sketching what he calls his flying machine. Here's what I find remarkable about Leonardo's approach to flight. He didn't just dream about it, he studied it scientifically. He spent hours observing birds, analyzing how their wings worked, understanding the principles of lift and thrust. His notebooks contain over 500 sketches related to flight, including designs for helicopters, parachutes, and ornithopters. But here's the thing that connects Leonardo directly to what we do in modern private aviation. Leonardo understood that successful flight wasn't just about getting off the ground. It was about control, safety, and purposeful travel. His designs included steering mechanisms, landing gear, and even pilot safety features. He was thinking like a modern aircraft designer, centuries before the first airplane would ever fly. I want you to imagine for a moment that you could sit down with Leonardo da Vinci and show him a modern business jet. Picture his amazement at seeing his dreams not just realized, but exceeded beyond his wildest imagination. A Gulfstream G650, cruising at 51,000 feet at nearly the speed of sound, with satellite communications, advanced weather radar, and luxury amenities that would make a Renaissance palace seem modest by comparison. Let's fast forward to November 21st, 1783. We're in Paris, France, and something extraordinary is about to happen. Two men, Jean-François Pilatre de Rosier and François Laurent d'Arlandes, are about to become the first humans in history to achieve sustained, controlled flight. They're standing in the basket of a hot air balloon created by the Montgolfier brothers, and they're about to change the world forever. Now, I want you to really think about this moment. For thousands of years, human flight had been nothing but dreams, myths, and failed experiments. And suddenly, on this November day in Paris, two brave men are rising into the sky, looking down at the Earth from a perspective no human had ever experienced before. Their flight lasted 25 minutes and covered about 5 miles. By today's standards, that might not seem like much, but think about what they accomplished. They proved that human flight was possible. They opened the door to everything that would follow, from the Wright Brothers to the International Space Station to the private jet you might fly on next week. But here's what I find most interesting about that first balloon flight, and why it's so relevant to private aviation today. Those two men weren't just taking a joyride. They were conducting a serious scientific experiment. They were testing equipment, recording observations, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They understood that with the privilege of flight came the responsibility to advance human knowledge and capability. That same spirit drives everything we do in private aviation today. Every flight is an opportunity to perfect our service, to advance our technology, and to provide our clients with experiences that would have seemed impossible just a few generations ago. Now let's talk about the period between 1783 and 1903. This is what I call the century of dreaming and daring. Inventors and adventurers around the world were experimenting with every conceivable method of achieving flight. Gliders, ornithopters, steam-powered aircraft, even human-powered flying machines. Most of these attempts failed, sometimes spectacularly, but each failure taught us something valuable about the principles of flight. Otto Lilienthal in Germany made over 2,000 glider flights, systematically studying how to control an aircraft in flight. His work directly influenced the Wright brothers, who studied his techniques and learned from his tragic death in a gliding accident. Here's what I want you to understand about this period. These weren't just crazy inventors playing with dangerous toys. These were serious engineers and scientists, methodically working toward solving one of humanity's greatest challenges. They understood that achieving flight would require not just courage, but careful study, precise engineering, and rigorous testing. This is exactly the same approach we take in private aviation today. Every aircraft in our fleet has been through years of development, thousands of hours of testing, and rigorous certification processes. The luxury and convenience you experience when you fly privately is built on a foundation of scientific precision and engineering excellence that would make those early aviation pioneers proud. And now we come to December 17th, 1903. Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. It's a cold, windy morning, and two brothers from Dayton, Ohio are about to make history. Orville and Wilbur Wright have been working toward this moment for years, and they're about to achieve something that will change the world forever. But before we talk about that famous first flight, I want to tell you why the Wright brothers succeeded where so many others had failed. It wasn't just luck, and it wasn't just courage. The Wright brothers approached the problem of flight with a systematic, scientific methodology that set them apart from every other aviation pioneer. First, they studied the work of everyone who had come before them. They read everything they could find about Lilienthal's glider experiments, about the Montgolfier brothers' balloons, about every attempt at powered flight that had been tried and failed. Second, they built their own wind tunnel and conducted over 200 wing designs tests. They didn't just guess at what would work, they tested and measured and refined their designs based on actual data. Third, they understood that the problem of flight wasn't just about getting into the air, it was about control. They developed a 3-axis control system that allowed a pilot to control pitch, roll, and yaw. This was revolutionary thinking that separated them from every other aviation pioneer of their time. At 10:35 a.m. on December 17, 1903, Orville Wright climbed aboard their aircraft, the Wright Flyer. The engine was running, the propellers were spinning, and Wilbur was running alongside, helping to balance the aircraft as it gained speed. And then it happened. The Wright Flyer lifted off the ground and flew for 12 seconds, covering 120 feet. 12 seconds, that's all it was. But in those 12 seconds, everything changed. The age of aviation had begun. Now I want you to think about something. That first flight covered 120 feet. The wingspan of a Boeing 747 is 195 feet. The Wright brothers' entire first flight was shorter than the wingspan of a modern airliner. But from that 12-second flight came everything that followed. Commercial aviation, military aviation, space exploration, and yes, the private aviation industry that allows people today to travel anywhere in the world in comfort and luxury. Here's what I find most remarkable about the Wright brothers' achievement and why it's so relevant to what we do in private aviation today. They didn't just solve the problem of flight. They solved it in a way that was scalable, improvable, and practical for real-world use. Their 3-axis control system is still used in every aircraft flying today. Their systematic approach to testing and refinement became the foundation for all modern aircraft development. Their understanding that flight required not just getting airborne, but maintaining control and landing safely, established the safety-first mindset that governs aviation to this day. When I founded VIP Jets, I was inspired by the same principles that drove the Wright brothers. The understanding that flight is not just about transportation, it's about freedom. The recognition that with that freedom comes responsibility for safety, precision, and excellence. And the belief that aviation technology should serve human needs, connecting people, enabling business, and enriching lives. So let me ask you this. When you step aboard a private aircraft today, when you settle into a leather seat and watch the world fall away beneath you as you climb to 40,000 feet, what are you really experiencing? You're experiencing the fulfillment of humanity's oldest dream. You're participating in a story that began with ancient myths and medieval dreams, that was advanced by Renaissance genius and Enlightenment science, and that was finally realized by 2 bicycle mechanics from Ohio who refused to accept that human flight was impossible. But more than that, you're experiencing the evolution of that dream into something even more remarkable. Private aviation today isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's about doing so with a level of comfort, convenience, and personalized service that would have seemed magical to those early aviation pioneers. Think about what we've accomplished in just over a century since Kitty Hawk. We've gone from a 12-second flight covering 120 feet to aircraft that can fly halfway around the world without stopping, that can cruise at altitudes where the sky is deep blue and the curvature of the earth is visible, that can connect any 2 points on the globe in a matter of hours. And in the world of private aviation, we've created something even more special. We've created a way for people to travel that honors the dreams of those early pioneers while providing levels of luxury, safety, and convenience that exceed anything they could have imagined. Every time one of our clients calls to book a flight, every time we coordinate a complex international itinerary, every time we ensure that every detail of a journey is perfect, we're continuing the work that began with Icarus and Daedalus, that was advanced by Leonardo da Vinci, that was proven possible by the Montgolfier brothers, and that was finally achieved by Orville and Wilbur Wright. As we wrap up today's episode, I want you to remember something. The next time you're flying, whether it's on a commercial airliner or a private jet, take a moment to look out the window. Think about all the dreamers and inventors and pioneers who made that moment possible. Think about the thousands of years of human longing that led to you sitting comfortably in the sky, traveling at speeds that would have seemed impossible to our ancestors. And remember that private aviation represents something special in this story. It represents the democratization of a dream that was once reserved for gods and mythical heroes. Today, that dream is accessible to anyone who values their time, who needs the flexibility to travel on their own schedule, who wants to experience the world from a perspective that our ancestors could only imagine. Next time on Above the Clouds, we'll explore how aviation evolved beyond the military in the early 20th century, when visionary individuals first recognized that flight could be personal, private, and transformative. We'll discover the forgotten pioneers who transformed war machines into instruments of personal freedom, setting the stage for the private aviation revolution that continues today. Until then, keep looking up, keep dreaming, and remember that every time you fly, you're participating in the greatest adventure in human history. This has been Above the Clouds, the Untold Stories of Aviation. I'm your host, and I'll see you next time, Above the Clouds.